A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. Part 2. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Chapter 8, Part 4. Of Satan's Third Way to Hinder Peace, by Spiritual Sadness. Wherein, 1. Of the degrees of spiritual sadness. 2. Of the frequency of this trouble, evidenced several ways. Of the difference betwixt God and Satan, in wounding the conscience. 3. Of the solemn occasions of this trouble. 4. The engines by which Satan works spiritual sadness. 1. His sophistry. His topics enumerated and explained. 1. Scriptures perverted. 2. False notions. 3. Misrepresentations of God. 4. Sins, how he aggravates them. 5. Lessening their graces, how he doth that. 2. His second engine, fear, how he forwards his design that way. 2. Notwithstanding all this, there is a great difference betwixt God and Satan in this matter, which mainly appears in two things. 1. God doth limit himself in all the trouble, which he gives his children, to his great end, of doing them good, and healing them, and consequently stints himself in the measure and manner of his work, to such a proportion, as his wisdom sees will exactly suit with his end. So that his anger is not like the brawlings of malicious persons, that know no bounds. He will not always chide. His debates are in measure, and this lest the spirit should fail before him, Isaiah 57:16. So that when he wounds the conscience before conversion, it is but to bring them to Christ, and to prevent their taking such courses, as might through delusion, make them take up their stand short of him. So much of mourning and fear as is requisite, for the true effecting of this, he appoints for them, and no more. When he wounds after conversion, it is but to let them feel that it is an evil and bitter thing to sin against him, that their godly sorrow may work repentance suitable to the offense, and that they may be sufficiently cautioned for the time to come, to sin no more, lest a worse thing befall them. He that afflicts not willingly, will put no more grief upon them, than is necessary to bring them to this. But Satan, when he is admitted, and God doth often permit him, in subservience to his design, to wound the conscience, he proceeds according to the boundless fury of his malice, and plainly manifests, that his desire is to destroy and to tread them down, that they may never rise again. This though he cannot effect, for God will not suffer him to proceed further than the bringing about his holy and gracious purpose, yet it hinders not but that still his envious thoughts boil up in his breast, and he acts according to his own inclination. For it is with Satan as it is with wicked men. If God employ them for the chastisement of his children, they consider not who sets them on work, nor what measures probably God would have them observe, but they propose to themselves more work than ever God cut out for them. As Assyria, when employed against Jerusalem, Isaiah 10:7, had designs larger and crueler than was in God's commission. God had stinted him in his holy purpose. Yet the Assyrian meant not so, neither did his heart think so, but it was in his heart to destroy and cut off nations not a few. So that when God is a little displeased, as he speaks, Zechariah 1:15, they do all that lies in them, to help forward the affliction. Thus doth the devil endeavor, to make all things worse to God's children, than ever God intended. Here is one difference betwixt God and Satan, in the wounding of consciences. But 2. They are yet further differenced, in that all that God doth in this work, is still according to truth. For if he signifies to the unconverted that they are in a state of nature, liable to the damnation of hell, unless they accept of Christ for salvation upon his terms, this is no more than what is true. God doth not misrepresent their case to them at that time. Again, if he express his displeasure to any of his converted children, that have grieved his spirit by their follies, by setting before them the threatenings of his word, or the examples of his wrath, he doth but truly tell them that he is angry with them, and that to jury, according to the rigor of the law, and the demerit of their offense, he might justly cast them off. But he doth not positively say that, de noventu, it shall infallibly be so with them. But Satan, in both these cases, goes a great way further. He plainly affirms to those that are in the way to conversion, that God will not pardon their iniquities, that there is no hope for them, that Christ will not accept them, that he never intended the benefit of his sufferings for them. And when the converted do provoke God, he sticks not to say the breach cannot be healed, and that they are not yet converted. All which are most false assertions. And though God can make use of Satan's malice, when he abuseth his children, with his falsehoods to their great fear, to carry on his own ends by it, and to give a greater impression, to what he truly witnesseth against them. Yet is not God the proper author of Satan's lying, for he doth it of his own wicked inclination. The effect of these desperate false conclusions, which is the putting his children into a fear, in order to his end, may be ascribed to God. But the falsehood of these conclusions, are formally Satan's work and not God's. For he makes use of so much of Satan's wrath, as may be to his praise, and the remainder of his wrath he doth restrain. Psalm 76:10. I have discovered the nature and degrees of these spiritual troubles, and that it is a common thing for the children of God to fall under them. For the further opening of them I shall next discover. 3. The usual solemn occasions that do, as it were, invite Satan to give his onset against God's children. And they are principally these 6. 1. The time of conversion. He delights to set on them when they are in the straits of a new birth, for then the conscience is awakened, the danger of sin truly represented, fear and sorrow, in some degree, necessary and unavoidable. At this time he can easily overdrive them. Where the convictions are deep and sharp, ready to weigh them down, a few grains more cast into the scale will make the trouble, as Job speaks, heavier than the sand, chapter 6:3. And where they are more easy or gentle, yet the soul being unsettled, the thoughts in commotion, they are disposed to receive a strong impression, and to be turned, as wax to the seal, into a mold of hopelessness and desperation. That this is one of Satan's special occasions, we need no other evidence for satisfaction, than the common experience of converts. Many of them do hardly escape the danger, and after their difficult conquest of the troubles of their heart, which at that time are extraordinarily enlarged, do witness that they are assaulted with desperate fears, that their sins were unpardonable, and sad conclusions against any expectation of favor from the Lord their God. These thoughts we are sure the Spirit of God will not bear witness unto, because false, and therefore we must leave them at Satan's door. 2. Another occasion which Satan makes use of, is the time of solemn repentance for some great sin committed after conversion. Sometimes God's children fall, to the breaking of their bones. What great iniquities they may commit through the force of temptation, I need not mention. The adultery and murder of David. The incest of the Corinthian. Peter's denial of Christ, with other sad instances in the records of the Scriptures, do speak enough of that. These sins, considering their heinousness, the scandal of religion, the dishonor of God, the grieving of His Spirit, the condition of the party offending against love, knowledge, and the various helps which God affords them to the contrary, with other aggravating circumstances, being very displeasing to God, their consciences at least, either compelled to examination by God immediately, or mediately by some great affliction, or voluntarily awakening to a serious consideration, of what hath been done, by the working of its own light, assisted thereunto by quickening grace, 1 Corinthians 11:31, 32, call them to a strict account. Thence follow fear, shame, self-indignation, bitter weeping, deep humiliation. Then comes Satan. He rakes their wounds, and by his aggravations makes them smart the more. He pours in corrosives instead of oil, and all to make them believe that their spot is not the spot of God's children, Deuteronomy 32:5. That their backslidings cannot be healed. An occasion it is, as suitable to his malice as he could wish. For ordinarily God doth severely testify his anger to them, and doth not easily admit them again to the sense of his favor. At which time the adversary is very busy to work up their hearts, to an excess of fear and sorrow. This was the course which he took with the incestuous Corinthian, taking advantage of his great transgressions to overwhelm him with too much sorrow. 2 Corinthians 2:7, 11. Thanks.